what do you notice that happened economically that, let's say, Trump supporters are always talking about, though not in that detailed of a manner, when it comes to the wealth being extracted from this country? If anybody wants to comment on that, now would be a good time.
I mean, I just don't. Why would we expect like the average Trump supporter or just Americans in general to notice something like that?
Well,
You
they
know?
do notice it though.
Do they?
Now they
Why?
do.
Yeah.
Before they didn't. I
Yeah,
mean,
Well,
the
no,
it's new.
I don't.
Like,
I don't
I mean,
even.
what are? Can I have an example of what they are noticing? Like, what are they
Yeah.
noticing being extracted?
So you're right in the sense that they don't know the minutia of it. They don't know like what exactly is causing it. All they know is that the middle of America, these flyover states, a lot of these places, their jobs are disappearing. The manufacturing jobs are disappearing. A lot of the blue collar jobs are disappearing. A lot of the production jobs are disappearing, and most things are either becoming desk work, white collar work that a lot of these people don't have the degrees to take, or their jobs are being exported to other countries. That's what they know on a base level, and Trump is
And the
speaking to that.
Don't forget the Mexicans.
Well, yeah, exactly. The other thing is that the lower end of the blue collar jobs are being taken up by immigrants that these companies are importing in, or people that just cross the border. So I mean,
hey,
on that.
motherfuckers, my power's about to go out.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
What about your cell phone? Oh, man, there we go. Well, hopefully Binty's
I'm
going to be
sorry.
back.
Rip.
Hopefully so.
So-
I
But
think now, being from the DMV region, I think that maybe we always had a little bit more information than everybody else, but I find that people are just now finding out about literally how the government works as far as like, what can be done with payments and what the Congress, how they dish money out, but it's not really what they dish it out for. So, for example, in the care, like when this Heroes Act came up, people were like, okay, well, why isn't, Republicans are like, well, why isn't it just for these 4 or 5 things? And they're like, no, you want money for the FBI building. Y'all want money for this, and y'all want money for that. I don't think people were really aware that in appropriation bills, they put everything in there. I mean, whatever sticks is what sticks. It's just how it works. Like, I just had to explain this to my dad. Like, he said, well, the Democrats put a bill up in May. I said, yeah, but okay, once you put the bill up, somebody has to read it. And once they read it, then they come up with a counter offer. If you put up a 3,000-page bill, how long do you think it's going to take to read and figure out, okay, what are they really trying to do in this part of the bill? Because on the first CARES Act, they worked on the bill together. So that's why the bill got passed so quickly. But on this third bill, the House refused to work with the Senate so that the bill would just go through easily, and they put basically everything they ever wanted in there. That's why it's $3 trillion. And so the Senate was like, no, we're not going to pass a $3 trillion bill. We haven't passed a $3 trillion bill, period. It was a $2 trillion bill, then it was a $1 trillion bill. So now they want a $3 trillion bill. And so, I think a lot of people are seeing that it's completely unserious to say, oh, well, you come up $1 trillion and we'll come down $1 trillion. Well, what does that even mean? I mean, I'm probably the most ardent Trump supporter on the thing, because being in this area, it's insane. Like, these people are crazy, but what do you want for $1 trillion? That's why my dad said, well, they want $1 trillion. Well, what are they going to do with $1 trillion, Dad? And he's like, well, I don't know. The cities need help. No, they don't. There's money still appropriated. So if you notice in the press conferences, they start saying now, oh, well, they've only used 25% of this money, or they've only used 50% of this money. There's money still available. And what people are now starting to see is that if you allocate more money, that doesn't mean the money's going to get spent. Those are two totally different, sets of standards. And I think, everyday people are starting to see, oh, wait a minute, the government doesn't operate the way that my household budget operates. Just doesn't work like that.
Well, so
how long do you feel like you have to explain that to someone, though, when you're explaining and breaking it down for them? Because I feel like the vast majority of people still, for the most part, I'd say it's like 2 out of 10 people are even aware of most of the stuff going on. And I live in like the East Coast, where it's, people are a bit more with the program on certain stuff, but a lot of people are not educated, and they don't even take the time to really figure this stuff out. But how long would you say I'm just curious, like, because you said you were explaining it to your dad, like how long do you think that you explain this stuff to them before like things start like clicking for them?
Well, this last conversation was about an hour, but this is probably about our fifth conversation in regards to how government funding actually works, and he's familiar with how government funding works. So I don't think it, and also I think people are figuring out that there's a difference between how appropriations work and the actual rules of the House and the Senate, because you, like I was explaining to my dad, you can't present a bill that's not in the right rules. Like, it has to follow a certain protocol. So if the bill doesn't follow the protocol, they have to send it back and go through reconciliation until the actual bill is actually in the proper protocol for both the House and the Senate. And so that's usually what ends up happening. Is I just try to make it as simple as possible, but it's still an hour conversation.
There's a lot of bullshit with all the bureaucracy and everything that goes into it. So it's hard to explain to a lot of people, which I think is a big issue.
So it's not just that it's hard to explain, it's that because it in a lot of senses, this feels very far removed from the average person, because this is something that you need to spend a lot of time breaking down, understanding the inner workings of, to kind of fully get the picture of what's going on. So for a lot of people, like in the middle of the country, that they just go do their job, they're concerned with their families, they're concerned with, you know, making money and saving money. They're much more concerned about themselves and to a lesser extent their communities right now.
Yeah, most people can't even figure out their Netflix account.
Like they exactly. Exactly. Because of that, I think because of all of these new pressures that have been building up on the, you know, the average blue collar worker in America, I think it's only now that we're starting to see them take an interest in these things. They were feeling like they've been getting shafted for a long time. Trump bursts in and starts in really layman's terms, really talking about like, hey, this is, you know, all your jobs are going away. We're giving them to other people. Our country's getting screwed over. We're importing a working class to replace you, all this stuff, right? In very layman's terms, he brings this up, and then people start taking notice. And then they're like, well, what the hell's going on? What's going on with our government right now? Maybe I should be looking into these things that Sophia was talking about. You know, it's a very slow process, but a lot of the middle of the country, they're starting to wake up to it. But I mean, obviously it takes a while, because again, their top priority is what's immediately going on around them. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, but
and everybody's been home for 3 months too. Just to throw
that too.
I think that's helped, actually. That's probably
I would agree.
That's probably helped a lot. But I think generationally, like, or generation wise, like, you have to really instill this information with the kids coming up now, because it's going to take a lot to get older generations on board with stuff, because they're not used to handling certain things or keeping up with managing these systems and knowing how everything changes and all these weird gray spots and everything in the system. Because there's a lot that it's to catch someone up, it seems like a huge task. I give up. I stopped informing people because I was like, I'm gonna let you do your thing.
Well, I think some of these conversations take a lifetime, and some of these conversations, if you have the right bear words, can take minutes.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And you kind of have to know, like, what are the epistemological pressure points, like, and what are the core issues? Like, how do you get past these scenarios when two different people think they're having the same conversation, but they're actually both talking about completely different things, right? So I think with Trump, for example, like, someone recently asked me, like, why are you a Trump voter? Like, could you just give me a sentence? Can you give me bullet points? And if I were to sum it up, I would say right now it's because of concentration of power abroad in China would be really the only reason why I would pick him versus the Biden-Harris alternative. Also, I'm generally curious, just on this stream, like, what people think about universal health care initiatives and the Second Amendment, because arms also applies to things like encryption, technically. And then we have things like 3D printers coming out, where, like, Pandora's box with technology is sort of opening. And so we really are starting to see the decentralizing document of the Constitution be put to the test.
Yeah,
there's debate about it being a living document, but that also means different things. Like on one hand, you could interpret the Constitution as a living document as something that you have to go through a process and amend. But then there's this like postmodern view of the Constitution where you can just reinterpret it. And I think the latter is a lot more pervasive and corrosive than the former, which is about interpreting the Constitution as it was intended, right? And so that's where we're at. But I am curious, just maybe a show of hands, like who's in favor of universal health care and things like that. Is anyone or okay? Yeah. We got two.
It's all right.
Three, maybe.
Okay. Now we also have
not bad in Canada.
We
I
also
don't
have
think America deserves universal
what?
healthcare. Like America already spends a huge amount of its budget on like healthcare related or healthcare related ideas. Like the medical system here is overloaded, and people are not willing to make even minor lifestyle changes that would massively reduce the cost of healthcare in America.
Oh yeah, definitely.
People
It's insane that we don't have it.
People,
I mean,
people
but
in America
I
are way
don't-
too stubborn.
Now, guys, we have a special guest joining us right now, and I would be very interested in his answer to this question. We have my friend Vish Burra, who is the producer of War Room Pandemic, which is a radio show and podcast hosted by Steve Bannon, Raheem Kassam, and Jack Maxey. So, Vish, thank you so much for coming here. So let us know your thoughts. I mean, this is a great question to get your input on.
Thank you, Lev. Thank you, Jules, for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Vish. I hope you can hear me. We didn't do any tests or anything, so we're jumping in this live. All right. So I jumped in the stream here when Jules was discussing first that he would pick Trump over the Biden-Harris machine because of China. So that's definitely right up my alley. I would definitely like to discuss that when we get a chance, or if you guys are interested. But to the question at hand, am I a supporter of universal health care? I mean, am I a supporter of it in the sense that that is something that the state ensures happens, right? Like the federal central state? I don't like that idea. I would prefer a more decentralized sort of system that's private, but is also open to real competition. And I feel that there is a lot of bloat in terms of healthcare regulation that is what allows a lot of uncompetitive practices and uncompetitive paradigms in the healthcare industry that results to the inefficiencies that we see today. But I actually want to say something about what Jules said about the Second Amendment, and then talking about how encryption is a form of arms, and then 3D printers, and that's actually it's actually very interesting. I've thought about that a lot as well, and I actually have a background in software, basically like corporate software, enterprise software. So hardware and software are sort of these things that I've always sort of tinkered about with, in terms of my thoughts and my journey. And, one thing I think I've come to realize, and this may actually then also impact the big tech argument. See, yes, the Constitution is a living document, and it could be, I prefer to look at it in the way it was intended. But that doesn't mean that I can't accept that there are some limitations to the Constitution. So what I think actually is that the First and Second Amendment should be expanded, and that they should be expanded. The First Amendment should be expanded to basically sort of break the intellectual property chokehold that's on software. Because what is software but just speech that is, or commands that are put into a machine, right? And on the Second Amendment part, I would expand the Second Amendment to not just protect our rights to all arms, but all hardware. Anything you make, any tools, right? Physical tools, and then sort of these intangible tools like software. So these
Free
are sort of,
software?
huh?
Like you're saying free, like distributed software? Is that what, like what?
In a sense, basically, I don't
Oh.
think that software companies should be able to hold on to lines of data the way they do, like, or have that chokehold on that intellectual property for as long as they do. If anything, like a software company should make money because of the talent, the human talent they have to support the service, but they shouldn't make money for selling the software itself, because once you've built the code, yeah, there's tweaks and stuff, bugs, and it's an iterative process, I understand. But to really replicate it and sell it and let somebody use it, it costs nothing, right?
That's why I'm not paying for the Adobe Suite. I won't do it.
Yeah, is that why? That's why everybody pirates all the Photoshop and
exactly.
all of those
They want
programs.
how many thousands a month for that? It's ridiculous.
This is a problem too in general with the music industry. This whole sampling issue of you have to go through all of these hoops to get samples for songs, or like the whole question copyright movement, and the work by Nina Paley, just using people's music in your movies. I mean, this is a whole huge problem. And the real problem, I mean, I do agree with expanding the First and the Second Amendment, but it really needs to be expanded to protect the individual, meaning a company should not have more power than an individual. So if I figure out how to get some software and whatever, and I want to do like on iPhone, if I figure out how to jailbreak my iPhone and I jailbreak it and I put whatever program on here that I want, I shouldn't be have the ability for them to basically essentially seize my property because I'm not using it the way that they permit. I mean, it's insane.
Yes.
And the fact that corporations have so much power over this whole process is a huge it's not what was intended by the Constitution. It's been totally
they've been given so much control. It's like you guys don't really think corporations are people, do you? That's an argument people have made before. That just doesn't seem right. What do you think?
They are
legally
people.
They are.
Legally, they are.
Citizens United made them a person, so that you can't. If look at with the opioids, those people should be in jail. They pushed this stuff all through Middle America, got all these people addicted to these products, and nobody's going to jail for it. Oh, you have to face a fine. Oh, we'll do payouts. We'll do this, we do that. The corporations are completely protected. So that's why, if you know that, you function your whole life as a corporation, so that you don't have to basically face any. If you kill somebody with your product, you don't have to go to jail for that. If you have everything, protected the way that you're supposed to. It's completely insane.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because it kind of ties back into like what you're saying about healthcare too, because like that's like obviously insane. Like a corporation is not a person, and the reason that's insane is because as an individual, you can't just like dissolve yourself and then reconstitute yourself and be like, oh, I went bankrupt. Okay, now I'm gonna like dissolve me and I'm gonna reform myself, and like here's the new me, and I'm like abstain from like all of that debt.
You can
but then it's interesting.
So
it's
just
interesting too with the healthcare piece. Oh, go ahead.
Just want to add, when you guys want to get around to it, this whole idea of Citizens United equals corporations are people. I want to, if you let me expand on that when you're ready, let me know, because my mentor essentially is the person who created Citizens United. So like he made that all happen, and he told me everything, the whole thinking behind it and everything. So let me know if you want to hear about that. But yeah,
I'm curious to hear about that. But I wanted to say one piece about the healthcare thing, going back to that, because like it's interesting, and like all this whole conversation about like the like internet intellectual property rights and like healthcare and all these things, it gets into this territory of like what is considered like a utility or like a resource that should be available to people, and then what is something that's like private industry, and those lines are being blurred, because we're not having an argument of like like water. Like you expect the government to make sure that the water comes into your house and that you turn the tap and the water comes on and you pay a utility. And that's something the government should provide. And so we're not like debating about that. But then we're getting into this realm of like, is the internet that? Is the internet something that is like a utility or a resource that should be freely available to people? And then this argument about the music and the software, you're making Fish and making this argument of like, oh, software is like that too. It's like something that's created and then it's like this resource that's just like out in the public sphere and everybody should have access to it. But then when it comes to healthcare, I think healthcare is another interesting thing. I have a lot of friends in Europe, and like when I talk to them, their mouths are hanging open and they're like, it's fucking insane what you're going through in America. And like Europeans just like are flabbergasted that we don't have universal healthcare, because it's just that's how they see it in Europe. It's like everybody should have right to healthcare in the same way that you have right to water, because it's something that's essential for life. It's not like going and buying an iPhone. It's like I want an iPhone or I want an Android phone, and those companies can compete and like show me which one is the best one, and then they'll give whatever price, and then I choose to go get it. But if you have a broken leg or if you have some like terminal illness, like you have to get healthcare, like you have to get it treated. And so when we're creating a situation when the healthcare is privatized, it's like, okay, now people who are in a situation where they don't actually have a choice about getting it, and then we're putting this like privatization in there, and then what's happened, the situation that we're in. I understand the argument of like, okay, companies can compete and like make the services better, that's like an argument, but we're in this situation where like
complete.
We pay Americans pay like 3 times, 4 times, for some drugs like 50 times the price that people in other countries pay for stuff, because of this massive bloat from this like insurance company middleman that is playing this game. And like the insurance companies too, again, about this like corporations like having the liability, like not having the liability about things. It's like, there's been all this stuff that's come out around like how insurance companies, they pay their claims agents based on how many claims they deny. So there's people who are like, when you call in and you're like, I'm terminally ill and I like need to get coverage for this drug, the people who are on the other end of the phone, they get paid based on them trying to deny you from getting your coverage. So there's people who are incentivized to like keep people sick, and it's this like sick incentive process, and like it's that like in all of this, it's like, what are we incentivizing? And like that's like the argument, the whole argument behind capitalism in general is like, we're incentivizing people to like produce more by the structure that we create, and we look at like an example like Soviet Russia, and we're like, all the incentives were backwards because it incentivized people to not create and to like create like more mediocre products, and we see this like degeneration in the culture. And so that's like this general argument, but we've got to look at like the nuances in the situation.
Yeah, I think with healthcare, what Lev and I have spoken about a lot throughout the history of our stream is how do we focus on crushing the prices? Because I think there's a lot of systemic elements that contribute to artificially inflating the prices of everything. One of the case studies that I talk about a lot is Martin Shkreli. He inflated the price of his drug to $750, and there were some MIT students who recreated this patentless drug. There was no patent on it. So some MIT students recreated it like molecularly identical for $2. And it was illegal for them to bring it to market. They needed something like $2 billion to like go through the FDI like hurdles. FDA. And there's like no common sense. Did I not say the FDA?
FDI, it sounded like, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's no common sense process where are the people just looking at this in front of them going, forget what the paper says, like, can we fast track this? Because the FDA has created the monster of Martin Shkreli by intending us to protect us from people like him. And there's other things in the market that inflate all the prices, something like land tax, right? So they keep bumping up the land taxes, which offload those expenses to landlords. And then the grocery stores have to raise the price of milk, or the gas station has to raise the price of gas. It's not just the fact, like, if you own your property, you're still paying rent your entire life, right? Because you don't own it. The government owns it and you're renting it from the government. And it's like I think you could make some changes, like you get rid of land taxes, you could have tort reform, you could focus on what are the things that are inflating the prices. Because Mike, if someone goes into the FDR and they're terminally ill, they're not just going to send you packing. Like if you're having a heart attack, if you're having a stroke, like if you need immediate attention or you're going to die, they don't care who you are. They're going to treat you. Then the aftermath of that, you know, is really a big part of the headache, like we have to fix. But so there is some of what you ideally, and I agree with, think should be going on. Like we do have some of that, but the system is just so broken. We really have to be able to look at it and talk about it and figure out what is common sense.
Yeah. And I mean, like I've seen this example of this. Like my girlfriend had a near fatal accident like 8 years ago, and she fell. She was like doing yoga in Golden Gate Park, and she stood up too quickly and like face planted off of a rock and like fell like 10 feet and like landed on her spleen, on her ribs. And she got really fucked up, and her spleen got ruptured, and she had to like have like a titanium screw put in it to like suture it back up. And you know, she was out of the hospital after like 2 weeks or something like that. She got surgery, and then they released her. And then she basically had like a 7-year recovery process from it, of like even 2 years later, like having insane nausea and migraines, being bedridden for like months at a time. And she said she calculated, she was on the phone with Blue Shield, like it was like 200 hours of phone calls, and like at, you know, like 70, 80, 90 calls like over the span of like 2 years, trying to just like figure out like what her insurance plan is. Meanwhile, like being bedridden and like having to like crawl to the bathroom, and like couldn't even like get up to like get food for herself out of the grocery store, and like so debilitated she can barely function, you know. And so it's like these bureaucracies that we've created, you know. It's like we can talk about it on this intellectual level, but like there's this way that like bureaucracy has been turned into a weapon, you know, because when people are like taxed when people are like emotionally taxed, and people are like at the brink, you know, most, like I heard a statistic that like 50% of Americans don't have $1,000 in their bank account, you know, are in this like super elevated like fight or flight nervous system response constantly because of just this like survival mechanism kicking in. And then when you're hit with like this massive like bureaucracy wall in the face of that, it's just like crushing. You know, when someone who has the resources can just like pay lawyers to deal with shit, and pay like just get other people and pay for services to like make all of that disappear, you know. So it's like all of these systems, it's not just like, oh, the ideology behind it, it's like the intricacies of the way it's constructed is just like it's crushing to people, you know. And it's just so inhumane, you know. I think that's the other part of it, is it's like, how do we bring these systems back to a way that's actually like brings in like human dignity.
Well,
like
the other part of human dignity, I think, touches on the comment that Randy Lenz made, which is healthcare wouldn't be such a problem if people took care of themselves. And let's face it, we do have, I think, a community problem, where we have a lot of communities where that's not really that big of a deal, as far as people becoming obese over time, not really taking care of themselves, and just, you know, that is something that has to be addressed